Okay, started. Go for it.
Okay, so welcome everybody to the SIG Cloud Provider meeting. It looks like it's a pretty light agenda today, but as usual, I think we can start off with, is there anybody who is new to the SIG in this meeting for the first time today? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Han. I just started. So we'll be joining. Han is helping me out. He will hopefully be helping with some of the extracting Google effort.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, end of note before we, before we jump into the rest of the agenda, tomorrow at the community meeting, the SIG is going to be providing a SIG update. So actually, let me drop the link to that into the thing also. So if you have any notes or comments on that, I'll work on finishing these slides up tonight. So if there's anything that you would like me to talk about, leave a comment in there, and hopefully that's the share link, and it'll be ready by the community meeting tomorrow morning.
Yeah, so I'm probably going to take some of the content from your slides and just copy it over into the 112 release notes for like major themes for SIGs and whatnot.
Oh, great. Yeah. That'll be perfect. Well, I'll make sure I get it done earlier today rather than later then. I know that the 112 release notes, I think the deadline was last Friday.
Yeah, they pushed it back today, so
okay.
I'll be waiting until you finish the slides.
Okay, directly after the meeting. I'll do that. Okay, so first up on the agenda is Justin SB for the implementation of the cluster API for DigitalOcean. They're looking for more owners to meet the requirements for being a Kubernetes project. So do you want to take that?
Sure. I'm basically just proxying something from a couple of hours ago at the, there's sort of this parallel effort to build up the cluster API with support for every cloud that technically lives under SIG cluster lifecycle. And there is a team from Kubernetes that built up an implementation of that for DigitalOcean. The question came up in that meeting as to whether or not they were going to, contribute that into the Kubernetes project in some way or move the ownership into the Kubernetes project. The barrier that they identified seems to be that they don't have enough owners right now. So I offered to take it to this SIG to see if there were people, I'm looking at a certain someone obviously, that might be interested in being an owner on that project and helping them shepherd that into the Kubernetes project.
Yeah, so I'd spoken to Marco a couple of weeks ago about this, and for me, it's just a matter of I just need to find time to sit down and actually get to know the code base and actually push some code before I call myself an owner. So yeah, I just got to do that, and also I'm trying to recruit some people internally at DigitalOcean to actually get involved with that. So work in progress on my end.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I imagine that most of the cloud controller manager implementations and the cluster API provider implementations for each cloud will end up with effectively the same set of owners files. But I guess we will see how that goes.
Yeah. And I've been mostly busy trying to get the actual cloud provider repo for DigitalOcean up. So once that's up, I'm sure it'll help us kind of push other things forward too. So thanks for bringing it up though. Appreciate it. Cool. I think next item's mine. So I shared in the Slack channel earlier this week, pretty much a tracking sheet that we can use to keep track of which providers have docs and are reporting conformance tests to test grid and all that stuff. So like, I'm thinking we should just spend like 5 minutes every SIG meeting actually going through the tracking sheet and keeping it up to date. Are there any objections to that, or do we all think we should do it offline? I'm just worried that if we do it offline, no one's going to actually update it. So we should just spend the 5 minutes now and do it.
It seems great. Would you mind actually making that a CSV that you check in someplace into your SIG directory?
Sure. Yeah, I can do that. That's a good idea, actually.
Just got persistent problems with Google Docs disappearing and whatnot.
Okay, noted. I'll follow up on that afterwards. So yeah, let's just get started. I don't think anyone from Alibaba is on this call. Is there anyone from AWS that can give us an update? Okay, anyone from Azure? Okay, so I don't think anyone from Baidu is here either. So I'll give an update. So we are out of tree. We have one more checklist waiting for meeting all the requirements for the new provider repos. That should be done in the next week or two. And we are reporting conformance test results to test grid for V111 so far. That's been pretty easy to set up so far, thanks to Ben. And we do have docs, so yay. GCP seems like someone already updated. I noticed Jago left a comment about docs. What's the status for docs for GCP?
I don't know. We don't know. We'll follow up.
Yeah, I can find out an update.
Okay, cool. Appreciate it. And then anything for OpenStack, Chris?
So on the OpenStack side, I talked with some of the people who are using the external provider, and we had our developer meetup, and so SIG OpenStack met last week, or SIG Kubernetes in our world, to cover some of these things, and their feedback was that the upstream docs that talk about how to utilize the external provider are mostly correct, and they are going to provide me with the kind of the scripts and commands they use to bring their provider up, so that I'll be able to review those docs against the others and provide more external provider documentation. And that's the guy, more or less the full context of the agenda item I had listed below.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so whenever there's like a link we can use, can you just update the tracking sheet? Yeah,
I'll ping him again and remind him that he has an action to get those to me. It's awesome. I don't know if y'all know Flavio from Red Hat. He's been doing a lot of Kubernetes work for their projects they sell there.
Cool. Fabio, do you want to give an update on vSphere?
Sure. Well, we're still in tree and out of tree right now, so we're still maintaining both, mostly because of some kind of split personality right now. Even though we have a team that is maintaining mostly the in tree and a team that is maintaining mostly the out of tree. We're trying to make it better on that front. Conformance and test grid is actually we're very close to start reporting. We actually had a few hiccups on that in the past 2 days. We resolved both of them, so we expect to have something coming in probably tomorrow or Friday at latest. Docs, we're a little behind that. We do have a docs folder in the repo. There is one document, one markdown that can get you started from like start to finish, but it's like not very user friendly. So we're trying to make it better. We have an issue open and we have somebody assigned to it. So we're working on it.
Sweet. Yeah, so mainly the reason I wanted to do the tracking sheet was because there's been I think for good reason, the community has been pretty vocal about the lack of docs. And it's been about like 2 months, I think, since we opened the KEP for how we want to document things. And so I think this is just a good way for us to keep pushing the agenda forward and making sure that we're actually working on docs on a bi-weekly basis. So yeah, thanks everyone for that. That's it for me.
Alrighty. So the next topic I already covered, the update from the OpenStack PTG on external provider docs. So Andrew, did you just? I was distracted looking for a link. Did you just talk about the cloud provider extraction working? Yeah, we just.
No, I didn't cover that yet.
Okay, yeah.
You want me to do that first?
Yeah, why don't you do that first, and then we can finish off with the kind of the last topic from the mailing list.
Sure. Okay. So as you all know, for the last while, Walter has been working on a proposal, and I kept to kind of get all the provider code out of Kubernetes. And we're realizing that the scope of that work is pretty big. And so we informally started like a working group, sort of. So we're just kind of meeting on a weekly basis to just touch base on what needs to be done for that work. Likely in the next week or so, if we find that this needs to be a continuing like meeting, we'll probably have to like actually form a working group so that people know like where to find meeting recordings and agenda and whatnot. So this is kind of just like an FYI. If you want an invite to that meeting right now, ping me on Slack and I can get you invited. Otherwise, expect some formal working group for the cloud provider extraction in the next week or two. Walter, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, one or two things. You can tell me if you feel differently, but the gist I got from the last meeting we had is that we sort of have the small entry players and the big ones, and by big and small, I don't mean company size. I actually mean by like the depth of dependency. So I think, pretty much Google, Microsoft, and Amazon have very deep dependency trees and are going to take a lot of effort. My general feeling is that the rest of our entry providers can probably do exactly what DIMS was recommending and just sort of build outside without worrying too much about their dependency trail. The other thing I would like to advocate is that while we're doing these transitions, we really need to be spending some time thinking about testing, continuous integration, test grid, and reporting back results. So anyone who has any opinions on that, please show up to the working group.
How would I get an invite to the working group?
Cool. I'll invite you after this meeting.
Thanks.
Is there a reason actually to not just use this mailing list as the invite list?
Yeah, I could do that too. I just didn't want to flood everyone's email with the working group, but yeah, it might be. We are using this Zoom account for the meetings, but yeah, we'll figure out some way to make this efficient without spamming everyone's email. But yeah, I'll figure it out after.
Okay, does that cover that topic? Okay, so the last item we have on the agenda is something from the SIG architecture mailing list, where Tim brought up that he would actually like to not see any of the external cloud provider code, and I think this probably also includes the what do you call it? The SIG cluster lifecycle code. Also, to not live within the Kubernetes repositories anymore. I haven't had a chance to respond to this, but some of the, as many of you are aware, some of the history of the project is of this SIG is to provide advocacy and guidance over the creation of these repositories and the management of them, so that they maintain a minimum standard. And so, the SIG was kind of created under the assumption that we would have these repositories. And the fear that I have with this, that this proposal would go too far and push every cloud provider into their own managed repositories, which would kind of remove the incentive of people following established standards. I can also understand that it's work, like, and every time a new provider comes along and you want to add 1, 2, 3 repositories, and that can create work and confusion and an explosion that the community maybe doesn't want. So I haven't had an opportunity to respond to this yet, and I encourage you, if you have an opinion on this, to chime in on that mailing list thread. And I don't know how Andrew or Jago feel about this, but I guess my opinion is, I would, if we were moved out, I would hope that we would be able to create another official location for this, so that we can maintain that level of community, both in terms of maintaining the quality of the code that's coming in, but also as a way to provide users kind of a single spot to discover and utilize all of the providers that are available. So I don't know if anyone had any thoughts about that.
I think Caleb has his hand up.
Yeah, so I've been towing that line both before the SIG was created and now after with Tim. I think it's actually in a reasonable spot right now. So the action was that we're going to go ahead and create repositories in the Kubernetes org until the extraction is complete and maybe revisit it afterwards. My hope is that we just don't, because I'm at least personally, from my experience in other projects, not sold on the benefits of having multiple organizations, GitHub organizations to be specific here. But after we have some mileage, this is a concrete example of taking a different route than the Kubernetes SIGs route. And so we'll have some actual data to compare. So I think no one is going to do anything for some period of time. So I think we're fine for 6 months to a year.
So the other thing I will say is my opinion for SIG cloud provider is if we have cloud providers with code living places we have no visibility, then it is going to be very difficult for us to do things like change the cloud controller manager, at least the base version, and the cloud provider interface and understand the impact that it will have on those cloud providers. That's not to say they can't do it, but I think we should be very clear to them that if they are not somewhere where we can inspect their code, that we're going to feel free to break them and it's on them to then fix themselves.
I think also to actually get into any of the discussion, it touches into the what is Kubernetes too much for us to have, I think, to make any reasonable progress. I've certainly not met any users who would consider the functionality provided by the cloud providers to be optional when actually running workloads. So the idea of moving them out because they're not core, I just fundamentally disagree with. I've not met a single user who feels that way. And so I'm just happy with the resolution we have thus far. And until someone comes along and tries to rock the boat, I think we're okay.
That's good. That's good to hear. I will provide just a little bit of feedback from my OpenStack perspective. Is we host everything under one organization now. It's a different project, but the hundreds of repositories under that one organization causes us headaches. So I can understand the impetus to want to organize.
Hi. So I'm the guy who's actually in charge of implementing that organization. The repos in Kubernetes SIGs get the exact same level of automation as the repos in Kubernetes, right? So you get all the benefits of the same things working the same way. Additionally, if your repo is in Kubernetes SIGs, it gets tagged with a topic for your SIG. So theoretically, everything that's tagged with Kate's SIG cloud provider, if you were the owner of all the cloud provider subprojects, that's your list. I think maybe I have a different opinion than Caleb, where I do have concerns that, so number one, my first concern is to make sure we don't live in a world where there are two tiers, or there are blessed cloud providers and there are not blessed cloud providers. And right now, the state of today, where we have some things in Kubernetes and some things in Kubernetes SIGs, could, in the minds of some, make that distinction. And we want to avoid that. And so that's why Tim and myself were of the opinion nothing should be in Kubernetes, so that everything is on an equal footing. And then, selfishly speaking, as somebody who has to manage GitHub organizations, I want fewer of them, not more of them. But maybe Kubernetes CSI as an organization to host everything related to CSI could be used as an example of prior art to have a Kubernetes cloud providers organization. I do have concerns, though, whether then that means ultimately every SIG is going to want their own GitHub organization. I'm squatting on some 27 to 31 different GitHub orgs for that purpose if we have to go down that road, but I don't want us to. But if we have all the cloud providers considered part of core Kubernetes, why wouldn't we have all the network plugins and all the storage plugins and all the container runtimes as part of core Kubernetes as well? There does need to be a line drawn somewhere. I agree, this ain't the group to hash it out. I think that's an architecture discussion. But just to alleviate the concerns of automation and workflow, there's no problem swapping these things back and forth. Everything would work the same way.
I do think that we we want that. I don't think we want a unconscious multiple class of cloud provider. I do think there is explicit value in having two classes of cloud provider, one being the cloud providers that are interacting and supporting the project from a project health standpoint. So as part of this SIG they adhere to technical standards for documentation, for reporting to test grid, for conformance. That I think is the bar, that this body here is fully capable. It was actually created to set that line. And so I worry that we're like regressing, that the whole Kubernetes like SIG things is that regression. That you would take away the carrot for, a random company who wants to sell something or build something on top of Kubernetes to contribute it back to the product. And so from a fragmentation, staffing, supporting the project point of view, I think there's a real incentive to having this SIG say that, yes, that these are the standards you have to be included here, and that we're constantly ramping those up. So we actually have like incentive for companies.
Yeah, that's what we have in place for Kubernetes SIGs. Like you can't just do whatever you want. You do actually have to follow the standard processes and automation that we have throughout the rest of the project. The distinction to get into Kubernetes is whether or not SIG architecture decides you are considered core. But like that level of maintenance and upkeep and expectation and good community citizenship is why Kubernetes SIGs exist, because that's intended to be the SIG-sponsored, SIG-owned projects.
I mean, I had a conversation with Tim about this specifically. I don't agree that this is actually SIG architecture's purview until it relates to how code is imported. The repository structure, I think, belongs either to the steering committee or contributor experience. But this, like you were saying, Aaron, this is not the form to hash that out. I just don't buy it. That's their responsibility.
Yeah. I think we can have an opinion on it and bring that opinion to the relevant orgs. Most important thing to me is right now there is a discrepancy between the different providers because we have entry and we have non-entry. And I actually don't particularly care where everything lives as long as all of the providers have an equal opportunity to compete, not, based on the features that they provide and the quality of their code and not on the privilege of where they're located. So that's pretty much my feeling on it. And so if someone does come up with a decision, I'll advocate for whatever I think is both the most fair and also gives us a way to provide incentives for providers to produce the best code they can.
Yeah, I think we all can agree, like as Aaron just said in the chat, let's all get to that level playing field. Let's get the provider extraction done, and then we can revisit this however many months or years it takes.
Okay. Are there any further comments on this topic? Anyone else wanted to chime in? Without not hearing anyone, we can move it into open discussion if there are any other topics people wanted to bring up. And not hearing anything, I think that we can call it a meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Yes.
Thanks all.